Can we talk about your mix bus? What do you
Hmm.
usually have on your mix bus? And most importantly, what do you use each element, and what does it add to your mix?
Right. Well, I'm a proponent in that you probably don't need much lifting on the mix bus to
Hmm.
begin with, because I think there's always a better there's always a better blend or a better leveling that can solve most of the problems on that you're trying to solve on the mix bus. So I approach it in two ways. One, the entire mix bus has to be there at the beginning, and I mix into clipper and limiter
Hmm.
because it immediately affects the size of the record. There are people who say, well, you shouldn't do that and let mastering do that, blah, 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 blah. But to me, over the years, the record changes too much when you do that, when it comes back. So limiters most of the time make your sounds a little smaller. Like they make the level louder, but the sound actually a little smaller. So I want to be able to push into the limiter and go like, okay, this sounds good. Or now it's pushing against my kick drum or whatever too much. So now the kick drum becomes smaller again, but now I have to push the kick drum. I now still have the opportunity to push the kick
Hmm.
differently, or maybe add a little bit more bottom or what have you, to counteract what the limiter just did. But if I never heard that, then basically I'm setting myself up for, well, it's gonna change in mastering, and you're most likely not gonna change. Not gonna like it. So that's the one thing. The other thought is like the plugins I use are plugins that have very good quality, but that are used in the final steps like mastering as well. There used to be a time when literally the mastering engineer had the best gear that you couldn't have or afford. And so there was actually a real point of going, well, I probably shouldn't touch my record too much because they can do it better. And skill aside, of course, they're all very skilled at what they're doing. But I'm also very skilled. I also master when it's necessary. So
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of that. But now that we're basically using the same tools in many cases, I'm like, well, why shouldn't I be able to use my limiter? There's nothing wrong with it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, I have ears. I have considerable experience, and it doesn't mean I'm not knocking mastering engineers. They're beautiful to have around. I'm just saying they shouldn't stop me, so to speak. So I'm pushing into this layer of dynamic compaction with the limiters that I need to hear, where I clearly can say, okay, that's too much. This record cannot be this loud. Well, I mean, it can, but it clearly is suffering because we're pushing it too loud. I shouldn't be surprised by that at the very end of the process in mastering. Um, so it's mostly that. There's a tiny bit of spreading going on, like just like stereo spreading. That would come from ozone most of the time, and and I might have an EQ over there that gives me a little bit of a smiley curve, and that might be different ones. It might be, what do I use? Um, the Chandler, the curve bander is a good one, but also the BX Digital, which is a very straight ahead one. I have used the Mac DSP filter bank for this, and if I need another band, I might just use the Fab Filter Q3, which is currently just like what everybody uses. That was not always the case, but it is a very, very good EQ. Can't wait to check out
Hmm.
Q4, which just came out. So just if I had to describe the mix bus, it's like first level, I might have a trim plugin, and because I might be too soft or too loud, I might just push it a little bit. I'd use compression very little. I mean, I do like the Townhouse compressor that Plugin
Okay.
Alliance makes.
Hmm. Yeah.
They're great, but I use it so little. I mean, you were talking like a dB, and then on top of that, I only use it in parallel. You know,
Wow.
I really feel that unless the actual genre calls for it, for instance, rock mixes are more compressed normally. I don't use much compression on the master bus, but when I use it, it's there from the beginning. So basically, the sound gets baked in. And again, if it's too much, I can already see it. There will be a little bit of multi-band compression, but not the way we see it portrayed on the internet a lot, which is like a dancing multi-band compression on all bands. I personally don't like that because it feels it's not like it's cheating, which is a little bit of cheating, but I don't care. You can cheat if that makes you faster. Just cheat. I don't care. Just make a better record. Congratulations, you saved yourself some time. No, but because I don't like this idea that like my mix bus, similar to what I was talking about the monitoring beforehand, if the mix bus should mostly be white and plain and untouched. If it's already like a thing that bumps and goes up and down and pushes at different frequencies, I'm like, how am I supposed to control that in any shape or form? I'm just guessing that that hoping that the multiband compressor or EQ, sorry, is just taking care of my problems. That's very hard for me to understand in my mind. I'm just like, what am I actually doing here? So the multi-band compression that I do mostly is just in the bass. And it's really with a very specific task. And the task is that in most genres, in most records, short of maybe jazz, maybe, we want a solid bass line. That's why it's there. The player played it as even as they could. All the tonics are as even as they could be played. If they're not, then there's an issue with the playing, right? Bass players, give me a call. We'll talk about that if I'm right. But it feels like the function is that we have a bottom that solidifies the record. So that's why I have a multi-band compression on the master for only the bass, because basically it gives me like another 1 dB or 1.5 dB of evening the bass out, because now the bass and the kick could hit together or not together, like things that affect each other, where the solidness of the bass gets out of whack. And so the multi-band compression pushes against that a little bit. But like everything above 300 or so might be totally even. So even though it might be like a 4-band dynamic compressor, multi-band compressor, the upper 3-band might not do anything. You know, they're also not a curve, because I see that sometimes people have. There are some, I'm not going to call it out, but like there are some presets I see all the time where like the multi-band output curve looks like this. Like the higher you go, like +5, +6 dB, and I'm like, no. I mean, good for you, but I don't want that at all. Like, it should be actually flat. It should be unity gain per band in my book. And obviously I'm wrong, because other people do it differently. But that's how I feel about this. And then EQ last, and then limiter very last. But that's basically my my master bus. I mix really loud. Again, depending on genre, I'm definitely at -9 and -8 by the end of the mix, before we're even mastering. And I do print 2 versions, but I do like one with less level, but I don't take stuff off. I push a little less into it, kind of going like, well, the circuitry of these processors is still in the mix, which means whatever they did to the song, short of the actual gain reduction, is still on the lower level version of this mix. And I sent both of them, and I kid you not, like to mastering, I kid you not, about half of the time they used my lower level and half they used my higher level. And I tell them, like, I send you that at full quality because I want you, mastering engineer, to choose what you think is the best version of the song that makes you help make a better master. But if I only gave you the lower level and then maybe the MP3 of the higher level, I'm like, no, I'm just taking information and sources away from you. I feel actually that's a really wrong approach. There's nothing wrong with the loud one. Very often this was what happens to me. I master with somebody. They master 12 songs, get paid for 12 songs, of course. And they show me their creative input of what they would do with the thing. And then it comes back to me, like I listen to it, and me and the client, it's not me pushing for it, but we will just go like, okay, well, these 6 songs, the mastering engineer did something that's beautiful and awesome, and these other 6, your pre-master, whatever, my final mix was just better, so we'll just keep that. And I tell them all, that's not a waste of time or money. This is exactly what you need. This is a creative exploration, and you like this one, and you didn't like that one. It doesn't mean the mastering engineer didn't nail it. It was just like this. Look, we like this one, and you're lucky. My mix is so loud and proud and finished that you can just put it out like that. That's fine. Or, and this happens from time to time, it's like they basically, well, we like this. Can you just do the mastering for these other songs? Or like, well, can you now do the mastering for the songs that you actually mixed? And mixing is a single effort. Like, I want to optimize the song, right? Mastering, if it's an album or an EP, is a effort where we're putting these songs into a sequence and how they live together. So, of course, I want to make a small adjustment to make them flow better, maybe together. But it's not because a step was missing or the song didn't sound good. It's just because now they're in a different context. So sometimes I get hired to do that. So I am a mastering engineer officially, and I do master stuff. But my main gig is being a mixer.
So for the multiplier and compressor, are you using the ozone too?
Yes, actually, the ozone is the only thing that does a little bit of the spreading and the multiband compression, but it doesn't. I don't use the limiter on it, though it does sound really good. I just, in my workflow, I used to use it more, and I was really happy with it, but now I don't use it anymore. And I don't use EQ in that. I use only the multi-band and the spreader in that. I should probably use the harmonic exciter, because then all my records would be hit records. I know, but I'm not.
And what are you using for the clipper and the limiting?
That changes, but I do like K-clip. I do like Gold Clip. Those two actually are the most used ones. Gold Clip, shout out Ryan Schwab, really good guy, really good mastering engineer too. And for the limiting that's at the very end, I like a few, and it's odd. I think my number one go-to would be the Stealth limiter by IK Multimedia, which is great. And I do like a very old Pro Tools limiter called the Massey L2007, I think.
Yeah,
and I know that's not available for all DAWs, but it's a great one. There are some moments when the Stealth. So what I like about the Stealth limiter, it's really punchy. Like it does retain transients surprisingly well, like excellently. And every now and then it does this thing where like the whole song is great, but then in the second verse there's this one thing that hits it, and it actually distorts. And you're like, but wait a second, in my chorus that's louder, and it seems to not be distorting, or maybe you don't hear it because there's more stuff going on. I don't know. So when that happens, I go to the 2007, because I get it's a tiny compromise, because you get a tiny bit less of the attack. And a tiny bit, but it's a tiny bit cleaner. It's like that. I have automated limiters on songs before, where like I was really happy with the whole thing, and then there were like 2 places where I'm like, why is this crapping out over here? And I just automated on the master into a different limiter for that moment, and it works. In the end, that's what you do. There's a really cool story, which I don't know the full truth of, just the outcome, so to speak. You remember that song Black or White by Michael Jackson, right? Yeah. That was mixed on 2 different consoles and then spliced together. The super nerdy answer would be, we chose the consoles for the verses and the whatever. What I actually think happened is that they somehow liked the one mix better for other reasons. It just happened to be on a different board, and then they spliced it together, which is a cool solution to the problem. But that's where I kind of got the idea. I was like, why do I need to only use one limiter if it doesn't work for the whole song?
Sure.
And that's what I did.
To watch the full video, click the link below and don't forget to subscribe.